The 7-point scale is where most new mentor coaches lose their footing. The labels look subjective. Exemplary versus extremely proficient. What's the difference and how do you know? Here's what I've noticed across hundreds of mentor coaching sessions. The mentor coaches who calibrate well are not the ones who memorize the labels. They're the ones who internalize one specific line on the scale and then place every rating relative to that line. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which line that is, and you'll have a concrete listening anchor for each of the 7 levels. We're going to break the scale into 3 groups because 3 groups is what your ear actually tracks during a session. Top group, bottom group, and the line between them. Let's start with the line. Read the scale top to bottom one more time. Exemplary, extremely proficient, proficient, sufficient, not quite sufficient, insufficient, not applicable. Look at the official BARS document. Each level gets a single sentence definition. Exemplary means completely, effortlessly, and consistently. Sufficient means the coach exhibits this behavior. Insufficient means the coach does not exhibit this behavior in response to the opportunities presented. 1 sentence each. That's all you get from the document. What we're going to do now is take those 1-sentence definitions and turn them into something you can hear in real time. 3 groups, the line you must hold, below the line, and above the line. Each group is a different listening question. The most important line on the entire scale runs between sufficient and not quite sufficient. Sufficient means the coach exhibits the behavior. Not quite sufficient means the coach attempts the behavior but doesn't do it competently. That's the ACC pass-fail line. If a candidate is sufficient on a behavior, that statement contributed to passing. If they're not quite sufficient, that statement contributed to failing. Hold that line in your ear. Listen for it. Most of your rating decisions in mentor coaching live within 1 step of this boundary. Here's what it sounds like in practice. Imagine the coach asks, "What's underneath the frustration you're describing?" That's a question that lets the client explore. Probably sufficient on A4.2 explores feelings and perceptions. Now imagine the coach asks, "Don't you think you're being a little hard on yourself?" That contains its own answer. The coach is reaching for exploration, but loaded the question with their own conclusion. Not quite sufficient on A4.2. Same target behavior, 2 different sides of the line. Below the line, you have 2 levels. Not quite sufficient and insufficient. The difference between them is intent and execution. Not quite sufficient is when the coach reaches for the behavior, but doesn't quite land it. They ask a question that could have evoked awareness, but actually contained the answer, or they paraphrase but get the meaning wrong, or they offer support that lands as sympathy. The reach is there. The execution misses. Insufficient is different. Insufficient is when the coach didn't reach at all. The opportunity was there. The moment came and went. The behavior didn't show up. The doc puts it as, the coach does not exhibit this behavior in response to the opportunities presented. Listen for the difference. If you hear the coach try and miss, that's not quite sufficient. If you hear silence where the behavior should have been, that's insufficient. Both are below the standard. They differ in why. Above the line, you have 3 levels, and the difference between them is ease and consistency. Proficient means the coach exhibits the behavior with ease. The behavior shows up clean when the moment calls for it. Extremely proficient adds consistency to the ease. The coach exhibits the behavior with ease throughout the session, not just in one moment. Multiple instances, none of them rough. Exemplary adds effortlessness on top of consistency. The coach isn't just consistent, they look like they're not even working at it. The behavior shows up the way breathing shows up. ACC candidates rarely score exemplary, so don't go hunting for it. Most ACC passing coaches live in the sufficient to proficient range. If you find yourself reaching for exemplary, ask whether you're calibrated correctly or whether you're being generous because the candidate is sympathetic. Be honest about it. Exemplary is rare for a reason. Not applicable is the level that gets misused most often. Here's what it's actually for. Not applicable means there was genuinely no opportunity in the session for the coach to exhibit this behavior. If the session was a 5-minute coaching demonstration that never reached an action plan stage, A8.1, which is coach partners with the client to create or confirm specific action plans, is not applicable. The opportunity wasn't there. It's not applicable when the coach failed to surface the opportunity. If the conversation was 20 minutes long and full of insights, but the coach never asked about action, that's not applicable. That's insufficient on A8.1. The opportunity was there. The coach didn't take it. When you mark not applicable, document why. Write down, session ended at minute 6 before reaching action planning. No opportunity for A8.1. If you can't write down the reason, you probably shouldn't mark not applicable. There's a second scale in the BARS world. The director of education uses a 4-point scoring scale. 4 exceeds the standard, 3 meets, 2 below, 1 does not meet, plus not applicable. The scoring algorithm uses this scale, not the 7.1. Here's how they map. Sufficient and above on the 7-point becomes a 3 or 4 on the 4-point. Not quite sufficient and below becomes a 2 or 1. The Tandem Quick Reference Card has the mapping table. You'll cover the scoring algorithm in detail in Unit 7.3. For now, the takeaway is, if you can tell sufficient from not quite sufficient on the 7-point scale, you can score on the 4-point scale. The 2 scales describe the same spectrum at different resolutions. That closes lesson 7.1A. In the next lesson, we go statement by statement, starting with competency 3.